Hey guys, it's Q&A Tuesday. Got a funny morning this morning. I just came back from Europe. I was there for 2 weeks. I did record an episode for this Tuesday. As we found out, that episode was completely muted. So I apologize. I lost a bunch of questions because as I answered them, I deleted them off my document. So obviously I missed about 4 or 5 questions from you guys. I'm sorry for that. But I came in this morning. It's about 11 a.m. Just flew in and I told Ian the show must go on. So I'm going to tape it now. He's going to try to quickly cut it and hopefully actually get it out today. And on top of that, I'm in serious email jail, as they call it, or comments jail. Right now, my Google inbox shows 698 messages. You guys always know I reply to everyone's comments, so sometime this week I'm going to have to take 2 hours out of my week to actually reply to all your comments, get new questions out there. But I quickly went on, picked a few questions to answer, so as I said, show must go on. Alcatraz. My son was on a teen tour. He came back yesterday, brought me this t-shirt. And love it. I mean, anything that comes from my kids is near and dear to my heart, so had to put it on right away. Anyway, on to questions. I'm going to start with a question from Jogo Wilson. Love the channel. Thank you very much. Very informative and entertaining. Editor doing an awesome job. Kudos to Ian. My nephew Devin would love a shout out. He's graduating from high school, so shout out to Devin and congratulations on graduating high school. I told him I would help him buy a vintage watch before he goes off to college. My question is this: if he's working with a small budget of around $1,000, is it possible to find a good vintage automatic for that price? Any brand with that price range that he can look for? Thanks again and look forward to your future videos. There's plenty. You got to remember, there's a lot of older companies out there. IWC, Girard-Perregaux, Jaeger-LeCoultre, Blancpain, Glashütte, and so many more that have been around for 150 years plus, right? So therefore, there are plenty of vintage pieces out there. Even Patek Philippe has plenty of vintage pieces out there. Vacheron has plenty of vintage pieces out there. The other day, I bought a Vacheron Constantine timepiece for like $1,000. It was a super slim watch. It was not an automatic. It was a manual wind, but nevertheless, it was still relatively inexpensive to some of the modern stuff that they make. Of course, a lot of people call these like the dog models or not so popular models, and you know what I call it? I call it supply and demand. There's a lot of vintage stuff out there from even some of the bigger guys that are affordable within that $1,000 price range. Look for Jaeger-LeCoultre, look for IWC, look for even Vacheron. It's going to be more of a classic watch. Don't expect to buy yourself a big, bulky, sporty watch. Maybe from LeCoultre. In the 50s, they made those Jetson looking watches that look like a little TV. I remember buying one of those pieces for like $400. I still actually have it, and I love that particular watch. But at the end of the day, if your nephew is a kid that appreciates horology, appreciates history and horology, as you said, he's looking for a vintage piece, there's no reason why he should go out there and buy himself some modern fashion watch for a few $100s rather than a vintage piece from a company with history. Go to eBay or Chrono24, type in IWC, type in Jaeger, type in Glashütte, type in Blancpain, Vacheron, type in 5, 7, 8 major brands that have been around for a while and just sort by price. And you'll find plenty of choices out there for around $1,000 to buy and to cherish. Odds are those watches are not going to be expensive to service should they need service because they're going to be a bit older. Just remember, he's going to end up with more of a dressy look rather than a sporty look, but it's definitely a lot of options out there. Again, shout out to Devin. Congrats on graduating high school. I hope you find that timepiece. And if you do, send a short video to Ian. It was an episode where we're going to start doing like a what's on your wrist type of series. We're still collecting material for that. That should be coming out shortly. Shoot me a quick video. Tell me why you decided to go with that watch, and we'll stick it in one of the episodes. Next question is going to be from Daniel Ross. Hey Roman, as always, love your channel. Thank you. I was wondering if you could give me some advice. I sell watches on eBay fairly frequently and I have never run into problems until this week. I sold a watch and the buyer's claiming that the package arrived empty. What would you do to protect yourself in this situation? I have insurance on the watch, but I have heard that USPS frequently turns down claims at the end of the day. I don't know if USPS employee or the buyer who stole the watch. I know this likely won't be addressed in time for me, but I'm sure this info could help others that might fall into a similar situation. Please keep up the great content. One of the most interesting channels on YouTube, in my opinion. Thank you again. Daniel, you asked me this question a week ago. I'm hoping this problem has been already resolved, and I hope you get your money back. Here's what we do. We do carry a lot of insurance, and shipment insurance is probably one of the most expensive things around here. We pay thousands and thousands of dollars a year to ensure every single one of our packages that leave this office or other locations. But we use a security setup where basically every single package that leaves this office gets packed over a camera that zooms in closely to where it's visible us taking the watch, putting it inside the box, taping the box, and slapping the label on top. There's a monitor sitting on the side that shows a shipping individual that everything is indeed on camera, and we can utilize that video in case somebody decides to claim, hey, I never got my watch. And on top of that, I have cameras all over my office. I can actually physically get a video of that box, make it into the bin, out of the bin, into the FedEx truck. So I can take it even a step further. I've done that before with a really expensive watch. Same thing happens on the way in when I receive packages from people, returns, for example, or stuff from other dealers. One of the dealers sent me a Patek. It was $28,000 Patek. I remember till this day. I opened the box. It's not there. And the guy's like, what do you mean? I put it in there. What happened? Blah, 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 blah. I literally put together a video of this thing coming off the FedEx truck, coming into my office, making it all the way through into my shipping room, opening it up, and showing an empty box. Again, using that same setup that I mentioned earlier. Unfortunately, there are people out there on the internet that try to pull these type of scams. We've been victims of that scam numerous times over. Most of the time, it ends up being the individual that bought the watch from you. Sometimes could be some inside job of the shipping people. For the most part, it's usually somebody trying to fraud you, the individual that buys the particular watch. My advice to someone like yourself, or for you guys that are out there selling expensive things out there, everybody has an iPhone. Today's day and age, technology is so easy. As you're packing this box, either do it yourself or have somebody literally hold the camera or show the watch, put it inside the box, sealing the box, and you can even go as far as taking that box and taking a video onto the FedEx truck or the FedEx drop-off. That's the easiest way to prevent those type of things. Unfortunately, the carriers or the insurance that the carriers carry, they only cover you up until the time, believe it or not, that the package makes it there and somebody physically signs for it. So another thing is make sure that you get adult signature required so you can see who actually signed for this particular box. Once the package is opened up, at that point, the carrier is not responsible. I know it kind of sucks, but rightfully so. And the reason for that is because, listen, anything can happen once they deliver that box. Once you have that video, you can say, look, the box went in there, here's a video. And a lot of times if the guy's a fraudster, it would deter him from pursuing this further, because if he sees that you actually have a video of all this stuff, which you can then turn over to the authorities, if there should be an investigation, odds are they're gonna kind of step back and more or less forget about it. Hope that answers your question. And I really hope you get your money back or your watch back somehow. Comment below and tell me what happened after the fact. Next question is from Dickie Darmali. Hey Roman, my Royal Oak is always 2 minutes late after 3 weeks. I just bought it last year. Do I need to send it to a service center? Thanks and good videos, bro. Thank you. I did answer this question before. It was either on one of the What's on My Desk episodes, but let me reiterate. Every mechanical watch is going to be off by an X amount of time, either fast or slow. And the reason for that is because it's a mechanism. And if you guys remember Physics 101, every mechanism is affected by the gravitational pull, which is why they came out with the tourbillon watches from Breguet, right? That adjust the mainspring every minute or so based on the effect that gravity had on the movement. To me, an acceptable amount of time is that 2 minute mark. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. Now, if your watch starts running slow, 5 to 10 minutes, that's when you start to see an issue. But that shouldn't happen until at least 5 years with your watch. So 2 minutes within 3 weeks, which makes it less than a minute a week, is extremely, extremely acceptable. I wouldn't worry about it. It's when you start seeing your watch stopping before it should stop. If, for example, it has a 48-hour power reserve, it shouldn't stop within that 48 hours. So when you start seeing your watch lagging slow or usually fast by 5 to 10 minutes, that's when you need that the watch usually needs an oil change. But for now, don't worry about it. Let it be. This is completely acceptable. 2 minutes and 3 weeks is really not a big deal. I'm going to take another question from JK. Could Survivor carbon fiber 8P shoot up in value in a couple of decades from now? This is a difficult question for me to answer because I've seen them go from nothing to a whole lot to back down based on market trends. And the reason that question is difficult to answer is because there's only so few winners within that limited edition offshore lineup, and you guys are welcome. I did a few episodes on limited edition offshores because they're near and dear to my heart. I like the Survivor. The Survivor is one of those watches that has stayed up there in value post-crash, post some of the other limited edition watches out there going down in value. It's still trading with box and papers in decent condition. It's still trading at that $25,000 to $28,000 price range. Without box and papers, I've seen them as low as $20,000 or $22,000. What's going to happen 20 years from now? I've told you guys a million times, I don't have a glass ball. If I had to guess, it'll probably go down in value. And the reason I say it'll go down in value is because at the end of the day, watches get old. Just like collectible cars, certain collectible cars get old. There's a what I would call a magic spot. And by magic spot, I mean it's a magic spot in time where it's the right time to buy and sell a watch. And I'll give you an example. A buddy of mine calls me from Aruba like 10 years ago. He's at some Rolex store. They're offering a Rolex Yachtmaster 2 yellow gold, the very first one that came out. Around the time that it came out, at a discount, he was able to buy it for $24,500. He called me up. Is this a good price? I did some research. At the time, my cost on the watch was about $25,000. So he's a friend of mine, not somebody I would make money on. I told him I can't really deliver one at that price. So $24,500, go ahead and grab it. Time went by, retails went up, market went up. All of a sudden, that watch is trading at around that $30,000 price range. I called him up. I said, look, you still enjoying your watch? He's like, yeah, I love it. I was like, because right now, I said, you can sell it, make about $5,000 and go out and get something else. He's like, nah, I really like the watch. I want to hold on to it. Lo and behold, more time went by. They changed the Yachtmaster 2 from blue hands to gold hands. It was a newer model. And all of a sudden, that model started going down in price. Lo and behold, Yachtmaster 2, at the age the watch is today, pre-owned, is now trading back at around that price that he paid. So he sort of missed that window to take a profit on that watch and put it into something else. And same thing happens with a lot of these older models. There's a certain window, and I think we're at the end of that window right now for some of the limited edition offshores, the oldies and goodies, like the episode that I did, right? Like the Alinghi, like the Survivor, like the Montoya, like the Barrichello. Because time goes by and people tend to forget about them, and not because they forget about those particular models, because there's a lot of newer models that are out there, and people want the latest and the greatest. It's the same reason I never buy my cars. I always lease my cars. It makes more sense financially if I'm going to change cars that often to simply lease it rather than buying a car, holding on to it for 5-10 years and then drooling over some of the new models that are out there. It's kind of happening the same with watches, but over a bit of a longer term. Are there exceptions to the rules? Absolutely. There are plenty of exceptions to the rules. Right now, if you go back and from the oldies but goodies, Barrichello is still holding strong. Montoya, not so much, but the Barrichello is still holding very strong. The Arnold Schwarzenegger, the big guy, the 48 millimeter, that's still holding strong. They only made 300 of those. The LeBron, it's been a while since the LeBron came out, that's still trading strong. Schumacher, it's been a couple of years, still trading strong. Why? Because it's newer. It's sort of in the beginning of that window, but eventually these things do expire. I don't foresee a Survivor or a LeBron or a Schumacher for that matter fetching millions of dollars at auctions like some of the older Rolexes and Pateks at any time too, just because they don't have a history of that. Go back to any major auction, Sotheby's, Christie's, Antiquarian, any of those guys. Take a look at vintage APs, or take a look at vintage Vacherons, or vintage something other than Patek and Rolex. There's really not a whole out there to begin with that you're going to find. And you're sure as hell not going to find a whole lot of pieces that are fetching millions of dollars, much like its Rolex and Patek Philippe counterparts. Just because, in general, collectible brands are Rolex and Patek. It's always been that way. There are exceptions to the rules. There are certain pieces, there's certain Cartier pieces, there's certain Vacheron pieces, but they're just exceptions to the rule, where the majority of the vintage stuff, since you're talking about decades from now, it's been ruled by Patek and Rolex, and I think it's going to continue that way. But again, I don't have a glass ball. Who knows? Maybe decades from now, my AP is going to fetch $500,000 to $1 million because it's the first Royal Oak. Odds are things tend to move with the crowd or with the herd, as they say. And if you look at auctions results going back 30 years, and you can online today, you can sort of see a pattern there, what's fetching the big numbers. And once again, it's usually Patek or Rolex. So, without a glass ball, to answer your question is, I don't think that the Survivor is going to be buku dollars decades from now. I think he'll be long forgotten about, because by then AP is going to come out with so many other different things that a market will not be created in between in order to make that price continually going up. Take one more and get out of here, because Ian still has to create this video, and it's already 11:35. This one is from Ken Fernandez. Great video as always, Roman. The quality on your channel is amazing. I have 2 questions. What is your take on Urwerk? Also, what is your crystal ball prediction on stainless steel Rolex prices, GMT, sub, Daytona on the gray market? Thanks, and keep up the great work, Ken. Urwerk, I spoke about Urwerk numerous times. I've shown a bunch of Urwerks on my episodes. I told you guys I'm a big fan of independence. I am furthermore a big fan of Felix Baumgartner, who's the co-founder along with Martin Frey. My first run-in with Felix Baumgartner was the Harry Winston Opus 5, right? It's a watch that traded at pretty phenomenal numbers. The market has come down on those, and I think one of the reasons it did is because, you know, Urbic started coming out with a full line of watches. I think their approach to design, Martin Frey is the designer and Felix Baumgartner is the watchmaker behind the brand. I think their entire approach to design and being so different that they really cannot be duplicated is what blows me out of the water. They make pieces that are seemingly not complex in terms of complications, but the way the functionality is delivered, whether it's a date, time, or jump power, or whatever it might be, is out of the norm. I think they're ahead of their time. I think this is going to be a future collectible brand. In fact, I've bought up some of the really original round Urbic. They have the little window with the number in it and like an arrow that goes around the screen. You can buy them up fairly inexpensive still. But I think these are going to be future collectibles. I spoke about this briefly when I did the collab with Steve Halleck, and I'll link it up there as well, where today, these are the future collectibles. And by future collectibles, like the last question, I'm talking about decades from now. And the reason for that is because the numbers of productions are so small for these independents. There's just not a whole lot of watches out there. Of course, it's currently biting them in the ass in terms of resale value on the market today because the market is so small, because the following is so small. The less you make, the less of a following you have. But I think in the future, these are going to be a future collectibles. If you're thinking about picking up an Urbic today, my advice is go ahead and get one. Go the pre-owned route, because if you buy it brand new, you will lose some money right out of the gate, kind of like with a brand new car. But don't worry about it. Buy it. If you like it, buy them. And I also think these two guys do an amazing job, and they create something every single year that makes me go, wow. And they've done so every single year, year in and year out. It's not the same thing over and over. Yes, the overall design aspect sticks within the lines of what an Urbic should look like. Every single year, they surprise the crap out of me. I'm not going to get into the details. Go on their website and read about the 111C, the Black Cobra. It's ridiculous. That watch is undescribable. And read about the mechanics of the bolts and the nuts and bolts, as I like to call it. And you will be amazed, I guarantee you. For those of you guys who are not familiar with this brand, I'm sure you are, you heard of them, go on their website and read about them. I mean, some of the stuff that they pull off is just borderline amazing. And for the last thing you asked me about, crystal ball, again, my crystal ball says that the GMTs and the subs are going to come down in price. And this is, again, my opinion. The Daytonas are going to stay. The Daytonas have always historically been above retail. They will continue being above retail. And Rolex is going to keep the supply in that way, where buying a stainless steel Rolex Daytona at retail is going to be a bonus. The subs and the GMTs, I think we are a victim of a hype, partly due to us, and I spoke about this before. I think eventually the subs and the GMTs are going to come down. I just can't see them trading at double the retail value over the next few years, unless Rolex really decides to cut down production even further, but then that's going to affect their bottom line. And eventually, they're going to continue feeding the market. These watches are going to end up in hands of dealers like us. People that are lucky enough to get them from their ADs, they're not going to keep them. And that's the problem, because when you're someone that waited in line for a year, let's say 2 years, you finally got your Rolex GMT and that thing is trading at double its retail value, it's kind of hard not to say, oh, wait a minute, I can make 10 grand on this watch or 8 grand on this watch and not actually sell it. And sell it to who? To a guy like me, who in turn may sell it to another dealer or another dealer, and then prices go up and they stay up because the supply is not there. The minute the supply increases just a tiny little bit, you're going to see prices come down on those. So if you're considering buying a Daytona, a sub, or a GMT, my advice would go with the Daytona, because that's always going to be up. That will never change, and I can almost guarantee that will never change. But the subs and the GMTs, I feel like their time has come to slowly start coming down, because again, there's just going to be too many of them in the market. I've seen showcases upon showcases upon showcases of dealers like myself that have hundreds of these pieces. Eventually, they have to end up on somebody's wrist. But what's happening right now is majority of the clients are going out there, buying these things, reselling them to dealers, and they're just kind of sitting and trading amongst each other. And again, prices are going up. So yeah, Daytona, go, if you're looking to buy one of those three, go with the Daytona, Ken. Okay guys, so that took me a minute. I got to get this memory card over to Ian. He's still got to cut this episode and get it out today so that tomorrow I don't get DMs saying, hey, where's Q&A Tuesday? As always, like, share, subscribe. You guys have been doing a wonderful job of sharing my videos. You saw my subscriber count. Since I've last asked you guys to share this across your social media platforms, my subscriber count jumped up almost to 10,000. So it almost doubled in the last 30 days, and I appreciate that. That's because you guys are sharing my stuff. I know that for a fact. Continue doing that. We should hit 10,000 soon. And I say we because I've told you guys before, we are together on this. It's not just me talking to a camera. I'm now talking to a very wide audience, and I appreciate all your comments, all your questions. Comment them below for the next episodes. I'm going to try to get out of email jail, put together a bunch of questions which I haven't gotten to yet, and I think over the next few Tuesdays, the Q&A Tuesdays are going to be a bit longer just so I can get 2 more questions. I hope you guys don't mind, and I'll see you next Tuesday.